Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Frost & Sullivan's latest webinar. Today's event is titled The 2019 Global Emerging Market Leaders. My name is Anna, and I oversee Frost & Sullivan's Growth, Innovation, and Leadership briefings. Now, today we're going to discuss Frost & Sullivan's 2019 ranking of emerging markets. Using a comprehensive data-driven indexing approach, we've assessed global emerging markets based on their investment promotion activities. Our presenters today are Prana Mohan, Associate Director at Frost & Sullivan, and Ritu Marjaman, Senior Economist at Frost & Sullivan. It is also our pleasure to have two very intimate presenters with us today. Ms. Marcela Granados Claves, Leader, Innovation and Industry 4.0 with ProColombia, and Mr. Rustam Istatey, Deputy Chairman, Kazakh Invest, and they will be giving us insights about the investment opportunities in Colombia and Kazakhstan, both of which are highly ranked on the index. With that, I would now like to hand the presentation over to Prana.
Thank you, Anna, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all those who have joined us. To get started, we're just going to look at one very pertinent question. Are emerging markets a part of your growth strategy yet? Now, while developed markets offer their share of growth opportunities, we at Frost & Sullivan believe that emerging markets are equally important to consider. Emerging economies have enjoyed rapid economic growth, supported predominantly by exporting to developed countries, and they've also enjoyed investment inflows. One classic example of an export-led growth model would be China, a model that led to an average GDP growth of 10% for a decade until 2011. However, in the aftermath of the global financial crisis and the debt crisis in Europe, consumer demand from developed economies substantially weakened, and subsequently a sluggish global economy started to worry exporters in emerging markets. So policymakers in emerging markets are now looking inwards for domestic consumption to drive sustained growth. As we can see in the chart at the right-hand side of the slide, the share of private spending of high-income countries in total world spending is actually losing its share from 73% in 2010, and it is expected to come down to 58% by 2025. On the other hand, the same for the middle-income countries will increase by 14 percentage points during the same period. Next slide, please, Anna. When we look, we see a dynamic shift in consumer preferences. As opposed to companies largely focusing on penetrating emerging markets via a physical presence a decade ago, today much of that focus has shifted to online platforms. And one of the prime reasons is the rapid progress of smartphone penetration coupled with falling prices of the internet. Now, China is undoubtedly the market leader in e-commerce. More than 50% of the world's e-commerce transactions take place in China, up from only 1% a decade ago. China and India are to become 1 billion plus smartphone markets by 2025, and along with Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia, represent a major addressable market for e-commerce, fintech, and a range of digitally delivered services. Online shopping in emerging markets is so far mostly dominated by price-elastic consumer items such as books, electronics, or apparel. But going forward, we expect food, beverages, toiletries to potentially surge, supported by continued urbanization in these markets and lowered logistic challenges. Going forward, we foresee that cross-border e-commerce sales in emerging markets is going to skyrocket. This, on the other hand, emancipates the need for a more complex supply chain system and with more precise shipping rate calculations, stable air cargo lines, and reserving inventory which logistics companies can tap into. Next slide, please, Anna. So as we speak about consumption, broadly demand for goods can be well seen as a function of GDP per capita. Now this can be explained by analyzing the correlation between the demand for personal vehicles and income through a typical S-curve. If you can turn your attention to the chart at the right-hand side of the slide, typically a country which lies in the blue zone during a given time period is said to have more of a flat demand for cars or mobility as income rises. This phenomenon becomes clear when we compare this with the chart on the left-hand side. If you carefully look, even though motorization, which is nothing but the car ownership per thousand population, is still low in countries like China, India and Indonesia, the rate of increase of owning a car is predominantly non-linear, and escalating. On the other hand, in developed countries such as the United States or Western Europe, demand is flat. This signifies a shift of focus in policy making from expansion to maintenance around transportation infrastructure. Now, with population getting leveled off, new vehicle sales may be seen saturating in advancing economies, which implies, number one, aftermarket activities to flourish and a gradual shift towards ride-sharing activities. Now, in emerging markets, owning a personal vehicle has actually become commonplace. Companies can increasingly focus on creating good car infrastructure for driving and parking. High automotive demand in these markets is also driving rising levels of fuel demand. The governments similarly are, increasing and turning their focus towards fuel price scenarios and providing pro-car policies. Next slide, please. Now, in the developing world, smartphone users are gradually transitioning to higher levels of engagement, particularly regions such as Eastern Europe or ASEAN or South Asian countries are expected to demonstrate a high adoption of 5G. And these markets will also increasingly embrace emerging technologies such as virtual reality, smart home solutions, drone delivery, consumer robotics, and self-driven cars. If you turn your attention to the chart on the slide, you will see how the lower generation of connections are getting phased out across regions. Now, 4G will still continue to dominate mobile network technology till 2025 in emerging markets. However, 5G trials have already started in major markets across Asia and Europe. I would now like to hand the presentation over to Rituparna, who will take you through our process of ranking and prioritizing emerging markets that organizations should be looking at for their expansion strategy. Over to you, Ritu.
Thank you, Prerna, for your interesting insights. I will now discuss about the indexing process. We will first discuss about the methodology briefly, and after that we will look into the results very carefully. With such a backdrop that Prerna discussed just now, we at Frost & Sullivan came up with a very unique definition of emerging markets that ranks a list of 64 emerging markets that you can watch out for in 2019. These markets are then further categorized in such a way that you can systematically identify the country-specific strengths, you can know the weak points of the countries, and thereby you will be able to make suitable choices. The beauty of the process is that this exercise is based on Frost & Sullivan's proprietary indexing methodology and takes into account a whole gamut of factors in order to prepare a list. In fact, the ranking process includes, I think, more than 30 indicators from a range of different areas to give it a comprehensive approach. The framework, as you can see on this particular slide, essentially centers around 6 crucial areas, or we call them pillars, and these are economy, demography, then we have innovation ecosystem, we have human resources, we have business environment and investment climate. The whole list of indicators is actually grouped under these 6 pillars. The reason why we focused on these set of factors is very simple. We actually wanted to have a comprehensive approach of country ranking. You see, economy and demography factors are the very core of all the elements. They form the base of any country analysis. Then we have the factors such as the R&D or skilled labor, for example. These are sort of the superstructure for any country comparison process. And then we have indicators such as minimum wages, then political risk, supply chain, then doing business measures. These type of indicators are policy centric and essentially capture the leadership capabilities of government. So this pillar-based analysis really gives it a 360-degree approach of geographic expansion decision and makes the model very, very robust. I will now hand it over to Anna again to take us through the poll question.
Thank you, Ritu. Yes, audience, I have just pushed out our poll question, and I will give everyone about 60 seconds to select their answer, and we will reveal the results. So the poll question is, which of these factors do you consider most important when undertaking business expansion decisions? Is it economic strength, workforce skill, innovation competencies, or investment climate? So about 30 more seconds here. Thank you to those that have placed their vote. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll question here, and these are the results, Ritu. It looks like we have a split. We have 28% indicate economic strength. Actually, okay, 22% economic strength, the innovation competencies, and the investment climate, and then the higher, the 33%, indicate the workforce skill.
Okay. Sure, Anna. Thank you so much for running this poll for us. Very interesting result, I must say. Workforce-related factors are, in fact, crucial elements in every site selection approaches, since we all know that high-skilled workers create new and improved products. They also help foster innovation. Low-skilled workers are always in demand, but it's the high-skilled workers and the work that they do can actually drive innovation, that can actually expand business opportunities. And in this regard, government also plays a very important role in investing towards workforce training programs, creating vocational training centers, and help develop high-skilled regional workforces. However, I think apart from the workforce skill-related factors, other factors such as political stability or, let's say, levels of corruption in a country, that also form the very base of any site selection approach. Factors such as efficient regulatory environment present in a country, or simple tax structure, then easy credit available particularly to the SMEs, they make a country investor friendly to begin with. So of course, if there is a huge political unrest in a particular region, no matter how much improved the skills of the workforce are, the country might not attract enough foreign investment. Hence, I think workforce skill, workforce size is definitely something very, very important. It's definitely one of the important factors of any geographic expansion plan. But business environment and investment climate is the most crucial pillar, in my opinion. Thanks, Anna, for running this poll again. We got some very interesting feedback, and let me get back to the slides now. So moving on. Well, here comes the results slide. As you can see here, let us now discuss the results in a greater detail. This slide is very interesting. It shows the country categorization. So what we have done is we have ranked the countries first and then found their scores for each country, their emerging market scores, and then we created kind of a scatter plot, the one that you see here. And if you turn your attention to this particular chart, you will see we have a per capita GDP 2019 on the horizontal axis and the emerging market country score on the vertical axis. And we have this nice scatter plot of the countries here. And based on the country scores, then we have actually color coded them in order to categorize the countries. The green highlighted countries are the front runner countries, the blue ones are transforming countries, and the red highlighted countries are fledgling economies. So the front runners, they secure the high scores in almost all the pillars. In 2019, the top 5 emerging markets were found to be China, Malaysia, India, Poland, and Hungary. Colombia was ranked 7th globally and also ranked number 1 in the Americas region. Kazakhstan also, on the other hand, also secured high ranking. It ranked 9th globally. I think 3 things that are common between all these markets were that they have very large consumer markets, number 1. They also have easy availability of labor, and favorable business climate is also one of the factors. And it's also found out that the front runners have very close characteristics of an advanced economy in terms of having a very matured capital market, smartphone penetration, very high vehicle sales, and so on. Countries such as Chile, then Malaysia, Hungary, they have almost more than 50% of the population having access to smartphones already. Colombia, thanks to its market size, then extent of availability of natural resources and low levels of debt, is a front-runner economy, being very favorable for geographic site selection. Kazakhstan is also an important identified country with large pool of work-age population, low debt, and very favorable investment climate. Then after the front runners, we have the next group, that is the transforming countries of 2019, and notable countries are Bolivia, Kenya, then we have Tunisia, Egypt, and so on. The third batch of countries is the fledgling economies, Nepal, then Cameroon, we have Tanzania, and then many of the African countries, they fall in this particular bracket. So this particular slide gave you a graphical representation of the country based on their overarching emerging market ranks. Now, however, along with looking at the overall rank of the countries, it is also essentially important to track from a site selection standpoint what are the pillar-specific scores for these countries are, so that we can understand which of the specific factors are really pulling the country's rank up and which are the factors dragging their rank down. So in the next set of slides, we will particularly focus into looking at key pillars and understand what are the driving factors for the countries. And for a quick and easy comparison, what we did is we created separate world maps. We also color-coded all the 64 countries by their scores in different pillars. And as you can see here on this particular slide, this one is for economy pillar, and where green indicates that the factor is favorable, driving the country's rank up. Blue indicates moderately favorable factor, and red indicates the factor is unfavorable and is actually bringing the country's rank down. Quickly looking into this particular slide, this is based on the pillar economy. I think barring a few countries in the sub-Saharan Africa, most of the other countries, this pillar acts as a driver, because you see a lot of green here. Moving on to the next slide quickly, where we have it by the pillar of demography. We can see that the giants like India, China, or Brazil, particularly the BRIC nations, they actually drive global consumption demand due to their large pool of work-age population as well as young population, most importantly, and that actually translates into high domestic demand. Hence, for the large market countries, demography works as a key driver for competitiveness. Moving on to the next analysis of the pillar. So this is for the pillar business environment, and we see most of the emerging countries, I think barring few in the Middle East North African region, have shown promise. It's also important to define what business environment means here. Well, business environment captures essentially the country's political stability and corruption levels. And interestingly, it has also been found during our analysis that there are many small nations whose business environment score was actually much higher than the traditional BRIC countries. The BRIC countries, as we all know, that they have large markets due to their size, but however, they're actually still battling to sustain a politically safe environment. And on the contrary, regions such as Central Asia or let's say Eastern Europe, even Mexico, Chile, these countries, they're found to have favorable business environment. Central Asia, and particularly with a very strategic location of being very close to the Eurozone, they have a competitive tax structure, their political situation is very stable, that actually drives the region's business environment. Now moving over to the final discussion of the pillar analysis to the investment climate, our analysis found out that even as per this particular pillar, the giants such as China and India are still to catch the countries like Malaysia, Poland, or Mexico in regards to the ease of doing business rank, then an overall investment protection measures. Also countries in Eastern Europe as well as, for example, the countries in the Eastern Europe, and we have some countries in the Latin American region that are also very politically stable. They also have proactively reduced administrative barriers. They have actually simplified their business procedures and they really have a sound tax system. Hence, this pillar works as a driver for the competitiveness for these particular countries. Moving on to the next slide. Yes. So, very colorful slide here. So, based on all of these pillar-based analysis, let's try to understand which regions seem to be most promising. Now, if you carefully look at this slide here, we find that the entire region of Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and also the Southeast Asian countries, the ASEAN countries, they actually show maximum promise. Regions such as Africa, they're still not very high on investors' radar for 2019. Now, another important element is worth mentioning here is that with regards to the innovation ecosystem pillar, where we see that no region has really got a very high scoring. Now, we think that the reason why this is so is because many of the emerging markets are actually still struggling to emerge out of the middle income trap. Still, there are many countries, many emerging countries where a significant number of population working for agriculture. There are existences of vast urban unorganized sector. Governments are actually trying to, they're actually focusing on providing the basic social needs and so on. Hence, innovation in the true sense of the term that lacks. However, having said that, there are great evidences, particularly within the emerging countries where governments are really investing into the promotion of innovation. A striking example could be Africa. So Africa is now one of the most innovation fertile regions of the world. M-Pharma in Africa, that has actually disrupted the retail pharmacy industry completely. Then we have Farmerline offers mobile weather forecast to rural farmers in Africa. Then in India, we have Reliance Jio bringing ultra cheap internet to every Indian. So innovation does occur in emerging markets effectively, and emerging markets will continue to attract significant foreign investors in 2019 and beyond. And Frost & Sullivan's list of emerging market leaders, this actually act as a guide for the investors to help them find compelling growth opportunities and actually work as a direct go-to customers. Now with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I now hand this over to Marcela Granados Galvez. She is the leader for Innovation and Industry 4.0 at ProColombia. Over to you, Marcela, for your insights on Colombia.
Yes, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. So here, thank you so much first for inviting me. We really think Colombia has now like a good signs for investors to come, like our economic trade, our workforce skills, and our innovation and investment competitiveness. So we really think it's a good moment for investors and also for Colombia to receive this investment. So I'm going to show you very quick about some opportunities here in Colombia. It's really a big country, as you said. It's a big market. So we have many different cities around our country where companies can be located, and we have many sectors where they can invest also. I will show you a little bit of these opportunities for the project, for the investment project. For example, we have the infrastructure sector, where some companies from, for example, Spain, Austria, Israel, China are investing here. And some opportunities are airport, ports, roads. Also, the L'Oreal National Plan is also an opportunity here in Colombia. But we also have opportunity in the energy sector, in thermal energy, in the hydroelectric energy, solar energy, biomass energy, and all kinds really of transformation network infrastructure. And here we have some of our investors here in Colombia, as Italy, Germany companies, and the United States companies. Some other sectors are agribusiness, in which are cacao, cereals, fruits and vegetables, meat, rubber, biofuels, forestal, processed foods, and here some of the companies that are already here in our country. I think it's important to let you know that Colombia has also 16 free trade agreements, so companies that invest here to produce here can export to different countries and have, like in many cases, no duties to export to 16 countries, so or really low duties. So it's a good thing that we have these 16 free trade agreements. We have also opportunities in the metalworking sector, in the automotive and auto parts sectors, and also in the construction areas. And here we have companies from France, Japan, China, United States, for example. So are just a few examples. But we have also opportunities in the chemicals and lifestyle sectors. For example, we call it there plastic also is there, and natural ingredients for cosmetics, because we have a lot of opportunities for cosmetics and also for natural ingredients. Here are companies as Unilever, Yara, Procter & Gamble are here in Colombia, as you can see in the presentation. We have also very good opportunities for the services and for the services sector in BPO, for example, in BPO with telemedicine, in big data analytics, in shared services centers, in data centers, in fintech, and smart cities, for example. And here in Colombia, we have investors from the United States, from Spain, from the United States, from Japan, that are here in our companies, working with Colombians and exporting some of the services to the world. We have also opportunities for the fashion industry. This is an industry that is in Colombia for almost 100 years, and we have like a lot of history in this area. But we have opportunities for the textile sector and also for the garment industry. And we have here companies from the United States, from Mexico, from the United Kingdom. As I said, with our 16 free trade agreements, is a good opportunity for the investors to come here to produce here and to export to some of these countries. We have also a lot of opportunities for the tourist infrastructure sector. Colombia is receiving a lot of tourists every year, and really it's changing a lot, and we have very beautiful places to visit. So we need more infrastructure in like for nature, adventure, for wellness, for entertainment, for cities, hotels. So here you can see some of the investors that are believing in our country and that are here, like Hilton or like companies from Spain, from Canada, from the United States. Also, we have here some capital funds that are investing in different sectors in Colombia, like real estate, health, in the information and communication sector, biotech, energy, agribusiness, and infrastructure, as I mentioned. So this is a little bit of all the opportunities that Colombia has to show to the world, and in ProColombia we are ready to assist you and all the investors to find the right opportunities, to find the information and the good match for your business here in Colombia. So in case you want to know a little bit about us, we are the company that promotes export and investment tourism here in Colombia, and we have 33 offices around the world. So if you are looking for information about Colombia, please let us know. We will really glad to help you to come here and to invest, of course. Thank you so much.
Very interesting, very interesting. Thank you, Marcela. The success stories are really very interesting. I now invite Mr. Rustam Izatayev, Deputy Chairman with Kazakh Invest, to talk about the compelling growth story of Kazakhstan. Over to Mr. Rustam.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to tell you a few things about our country. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rustam. I'm a Deputy CEO of, let's say, classical IPA, Investment Promotion Agency of Kazakhstan. We're called Kazakh Invest, the national company. First and foremost, I want to thank the company for making a very clear and insightful presentation. We just, I think all of us, for numerous times, we've been reassured that skills, human capital is the key issue for investors, and that's why we're trying to develop it even further. Let me start by telling you the breaking news. As we speak, our president has addressed the nation that he is leaving his post, and by that I want just to show Kazakhstan's Kazakh Invest dedication. Our dedication to attract investments is unparalleled, because instead of watching the presidential speech, we are attending this webinar. So thank you. Let me also tell you that, let me tell you just 10 insightful facts about Kazakhstan. If you need to know something more, I'm always eager to tell you in detail. First, we are #1 in the world for protecting minority investors by the World Bank rankings. We're also first in the world for cost effectiveness in manufacturing, which was measured by FTI Intelligence. We're also first in the CIS region for FDI per capita, We're obviously the 9th largest country in the world by territory. We are the biggest economy in the region with a GDP larger than all other Central Asian states combined. Among world's top 30 countries, we are entering that top 30 with highest human capital, according to World Economic Forum. One also interesting fact that 70% of China-Europe transit traffic goes via Kazakhstan. Also, according to Wall Street Journal, we have the highest degree of economic freedom among CIS and Central Asia countries, which is true. Very few people know that we are the only country in the region, in the whole Eurasian region, providing a common law court system. We started doing that by introducing Astana International Financial System, where we practice the English law. And the pleasant result for us was the fact that we now 28 in the World Bank's Doing Business Index, placing us in the top 15% globally for countries with the best investment climate. So that's just 10 facts about our country. And looking at your presentation, I was pleased to see that the Central Asian region is ranked relatively high, very high actually, among other regions. That the world community actually acknowledges the fact that we have a favorable investment climate, which we very thoroughly try to improve. We also have we happen to have a very good human capital resources. One can say that is the heritage of the Soviet system, where all men and women were attending schools and universities. And we also have attracted many foreign universities to partner with our local universities. And Kazakhs, traditionally, they place very high emphasis on education. So that's that. I also, just to spare our audience of nerdy and dull presentations, I just want to make a note that listening to the criteria that you've presented for criteria that investors actually allude to when they make a decision on whether or not to invest in a particular country, that resembled me the Ruchir Sharma's famous book, The Rise and Fall of Nations. I'm sure many in the audience have read this book. So yeah, I mean, it really correlates and reiterates the principles that investors use when they invest. And just giving you an example on his, he set out in his book, it's actually a bestseller right now. He set out 10 criteria, and among it is inflation. He puts emphasis to inflation, Mr. Sharma. He is, by the way, the investment chairman of Morgan Stanley's investment arm. So inflation in Kazakhstan, we are happy to say that it's been down from previous years now, down to about 6 to 7% annually. From it used to be twice as much around 5 years ago. Also, Mr. Sharma knows that the debt, as you also mentioned, that the debt issue is of our concern. And as a resource-rich country, we have a relatively low debt to GDP ratio, which is also good. And also, least but not last, Mr. Sharma, in his book The Rise and Fall of Nations, he also places a big emphasis on the fact that on trade links. So, for example, Sharma is very optimistic about the U.S. just because of its deep trade links, strong manufacturing and technology, and good billionaires, as he says. Well, in that regard, we also can fare well because we have a very deep trade links. As I mentioned, we account for 70% of transit between Europe and China. We are very proud as a country to have very close relationships with big markets like India. We have very close and productive relationships with India. We have impeccable relations with Russia and China, and also United States. So that helps. Exploiting economically the the trade links that we have with these countries, I think, is something to be seen, and we are also trying to exploit the benefits, to reap the benefits of the trade links we have at this point. Mr. Sharma also said about strong manufacturing. Well, as I mentioned, it actually caught us by surprise, to be honest with you, but by Financial Times, we were acknowledged as the #1 in the world for cost effectiveness in manufacturing in the latest 2018 rankings. So this is no surprise for engineers, because they know that the cost of electricity, the cost of land, and the cost of other utilities is one of the lowest in the world in our country. So that is why I assume we've been named as a top country for cost effectiveness in manufacturing in the world. Technology-wise, this is the last pillar we are hardly working on at this point. We've created international IT hub, and we have a special state program for digitalization of the economy. I can also mention that among Central Asia's countries, we have the deepest penetration of mobile phones and internet penetration, so that also helps. And we are now working closely with the Nokia's on introducing 5G. And the president's last visit to Finland has also improved our chances in introducing 5G. So that's in a nutshell about our country, about our investment climate, and about our efforts. And once again, thank you for sharing the criteria, and I would recommend to tell that criteria to Mr. Sharma. He would be pleased to know that he also goes in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rustam. It was really nice for your presentation. Moving on with the presentation. Well, as we come to the close of this presentation, a quick summary of what we have shared today and what you can take away. Last words, basically. So in terms of the emerging market trends, what are the key advantages? What are the pull factors that are drawing businesses to emerging markets? As explained, most of the emerging markets have now turned to focus on a consumption-driven growth model, and hence these markets are experiencing rapid growth in their consumer demand for goods and services. So businesses are increasingly looking to tap into this demand that's coming out of the emerging markets now. One classic example which we have discussed is the automotive demand in emerging markets. Another important area is how people in the emerging countries are quickly adopting to smartphone penetrations, backing various digital deliveries. Next is we have also gone in detail through Frost & Sullivan's 2019 Emerging Markets Methodology and Index, and hope you have a fair understanding of what we have come out with as the 2019 Emerging Markets Frontrunners. So our global emerging market frontrunners 2019 is obviously China, Malaysia, and India from the Asian region. We also have other countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Poland, Hungary, Colombia are some of the other front runners from other regions. Do keep in mind that this is not the full list of front runners. There are more, and we have also ranked transforming markets and the fledgling markets, as you would have heard in the course through this presentation. So this list of emerging markets is an annual index and takes place on an annual basis, and this is the 2019 version. And do stay tuned, because we will be coming out with the 2020 update of the emerging market list update, so hope to have your participation then. And if you want to know more about the methodology, you want to understand the results, want to understand what the indicators are, and want to customize the index specifically for you, we would be happy to work with you. So with this, I hand this over to Anna.
Thank you very much. We'll just go over our next steps quickly and then go into the question and answer session due to the time. So we do have a detailed report on the 2019 emerging market list that will be up on our website, frost.com, in about April 2019. So if you're interested in receiving a copy of this report, you can write down the contact details that will be displayed shortly. We also like to extend the opportunity for you to engage in a free growth strategy dialogue with one of our experts here at Frost & Sullivan. I will also have some more details that you can contact to obtain your free growth strategy dialogue. And the contact details are Vignesh. He is our key account manager of our emerging market innovation practice. And so if you, again, are interested in engaging with the growth strategy dialogue or receiving a copy of the 2019 emerging market list report, I have displayed his details on your screen at this time. There is a email and also his direct telephone number. So at this time we have a few minutes for some questions, and I'll go ahead and start the question and answer session now. If for some reason we do not get to your question, the team will get back with you offline. So our first question here, this is going to Mr. Rustam. So, Mr. Yes. Rustam, in Kazakhstan, which are the new industries being developed and which do not exist in USSR?
Oh, that's a tough one, I have to admit. The new industries, well, we are very proud to announce that since the independence after the collapse of Soviet Union, we, according to the statistics, give or take, we now produce 200 goods that never been produced prior. I can give you the full list later, separately. The new industries that the government has set out as a priority sectors for which we provide special support, incentives, also the tax incentives are the following four. It's the metals and mining, obviously something that we've been naturally endowed with. So going up the value chain, all the investment projects in this realm of metals and mining are more than welcome. The second sphere is machinery. I think as in all developing countries, machinery is always the priority sector. We're also talking in this regard particularly about the agricultural machinery, since we have one of the largest areas of cropland in the world, and we need lots of machinery, agricultural machinery. The third sector is petrochemistry. Petrochemistry is something that we heavily bet on, since we are in the top 10 oil producing countries. We are still to see the development, the rapid development of our petrochemical industry, and as you know, this is a very capital-consuming, capital-intensive projects, and we are now looking for global players, big global investors to start developing petrochemical industry in Kazakhstan. The fourth is the agricultural sector. As I said, we have some unique advantages. Even, let's say, compared to Brazil, we tend to present ourselves as being the best country for organic agricultural products, simply because our cows and other animals, they breathe freely across the vast fields with natural grass. So obviously the quality of meat and all agricultural products is as organic as it can be. So we are now trying to pitch to our global investors that we can be the perfect place for locating a production aimed at maybe high premium, high-end agricultural products. So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you. Now our next question, this is going to Marcela. Marcela, in which sectors has Colombia received more foreign investment projects, and which sectors have more jobs that have been created?
Okay. Well, in the last 10 years, we have seen that the software and the IT sector have received 26% of almost of the projects. Next are business services with almost 14% of the projects, financial services with 10%, 11% of the projects, and then our machinery with 8%, and logistics almost with 5% of the project. And for the job generated, real estate is the one that more jobs are created here in Colombia with 15%, but also software has like a 14%, logistics 7%, tourism 6%, agro-industry another 5%. So we really think that a lot of the projects that are coming here to Colombia are creating not only value but also jobs, are generating important jobs for our country, and we are glad that is happening here. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Marcela. And we have time for one more question. And this question here is for Ritu. Ritu, I cannot see any African countries. Which are the emerging markets in Africa?
Okay. There are many African countries that were a part of the indexing process, such as South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, and so on. I think about 15 to 20 African countries were analyzed during the indexing process. I think South Africa was a front-runner country, then Morocco, Ghana were the other front-runner countries. We also had Kenya, Tunisia, these countries were analyzed. Should you want to know the complete list of countries, please write back to us. We will be happy to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ritu. So this concludes today's webinar. And once again, we have the contact details for Vignesh to contact us with the Growth Strategy Dialogue, or also obtaining the 2019 Emerging Market List Report, or any other additional questions. Once again, we'd like to thank our speakers today, Ms. Marcela Granados-Glavis, and also Mr. Rustam, for joining us today. Thank you for your time.